Will the world ever know what really happened?
Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Emily, and what can I say? I'm back and better than ever. I got a camera, as you could tell, over the holidays. I am back today with a video that I have been wanting to make for a while, but have been very apprehensive, and like I'm stalling right now telling you all these things because I'm really nervous about it. Something that you may not know about me just based off of the stuff that I post on my channel is that I really like true crime. Like, I really like true crime. As I was trying to I was on ye old phone and coming up with new video ideas once I got this camera because I wanted to be good at YouTube. I wanted to think of videos that I actually wanted to make and not just content that I was putting out for the sake of content, which I feel like I did a lot of last year. Doing true crime videos was something that I was really interested in and willing to try. So this is kind of a test run. Yeah, I just decided, you know what, now that I have this nice camera and I feel like I can make videos that I want to make that are the quality that I want them to be because I'm a perfectionist. Hi, I'm Emily, welcome to my YouTube channel, and yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and give it a whirl. So here we are. So today I am doing not just a true crime video, but a missing persons case, and there are 3 reasons why I am doing a missing persons case as like the dive into true crime. Number 1 is that I feel like there is a lesson to be learned from every missing persons case, and the lesson that is to be taken away from this case I grew up hearing because of this case. Number 2 is that awareness is important. There are so many missing people just in the United States, y'all. And I feel like now we're in a day and age where we have things like Twitter and Facebook where you can share posts easily and you don't necessarily need traditional media to help you out. But regardless of anything, missing people deserve to be found and to have justice. So that's just something that I'm really passionate about. The sun is behind a cloud right now. I'm really sorry, but missing people deserve to have a voice, and I have a voice, so I'm gonna use it for them. Easy as that. And then 3rd is a reason that is nowhere near as important and serious as the other 2, but one of my favorite people on this entire planet is currently involved in a project that talks about very similar things to what I'm talking about in today's video, and I felt like it was the prime opportunity to give my girl some promo. So Levin Rambin, who I love and adore with my whole heart, is currently starring in a show on WGN America called Gone. And Gone is about a woman who was a survivor of a childhood abduction, and all these years later she is recruited by the same FBI agent who rescued her to join his little special FBI task force that is dedicated to solving abductions and missing persons cases. Only a few episodes have aired at the time that I'm uploading this, but they are phenomenal. Levin Rambin is a star, and it's just a really fantastic show if you like stuff like Law & Order SVU, Chicago PD, those are some of my favorite shows. You will eat this up. And no, Gone is not paying me to say any of this. They are not sponsoring me. I wish they would. But I just want to share that. So if you enjoy true crime stuff like me and you're looking for a new show to watch, hit it up. So without further ado, we're gonna jump into the case, and that is the disappearance of Natalee Holloway.
Police in Aruba are investigating the disappearance of an Alabama high school student.
Mysterious disappearance of an American teenager.
The people closest to her are not giving up.
What happened to Natalee Holloway?
Police, joined by well-wishers, scour Aruba's beaches for signs of Natalee Holloway.
A little bit of just my personal experience with the case, really quick before we dive in. I was 6 or 7 when Natalee went missing. I have very fuzzy memories, but I remember the lesson, I should say, I guess, that comes from this case being drilled into my head every time me and my family went on vacation. You're going to find out why. Natalee Holloway was 18 years old at the time of her disappearance, and Natalee was described as being very, very smart, very driven academically. She was the kind of girl who, if you had a high enough GPA, you didn't have to take your senior finals, and Natalee did not have to take her finals. She was that smart. She had been accepted into the University of Alabama and was planning on going down a pre-med track to become a doctor. So she was definitely on her way to great, great things. She was the kind of girl who would tell you how it is, but she loved her friends, loved The Wizard of Oz and Leonard Skinner's music, and she was the type who she enjoyed having fun, but her friends said that she definitely would always err on the side of caution. She wasn't much of a rule bender. A beautiful, bright, original type of girl.
Hey.
It's Hootie.
Hootie Hoo Holloway.
Hi, friend. Just, you know, sitting in the back, cruising over to my place, and you're doing an excellent job. And I just want to say happy birthday. You know, you look like a new woman, and I'm sure you feel like one too. And the beach was a blast. I had the best time of my life.
So Natalee graduated from Mountain Brook High School in Alabama in 2005. On Thursday, May 26, Natalee, 120-something fellow graduates, and 7 chaperones all took off on an unofficial graduation trip to Aruba. Now, the graduation trip was unofficial, so the school offered it to the kids, but the school was not hosting it. So for example, I went on a senior trip myself my senior year to New York, and in comparison, our trip was a lot more structured and overseen than this trip to Aruba. Right off the bat, the school said that chaperones were not there to tell kids what to do. They were simply just there in case of an emergency and to make sure that everything was going all right. And the kids were pretty much allowed to do whatever they wanted to do while they were in Aruba for the 3.5 days that they were there. Natalee's dad, Dave, did not want her going on this trip, but she really, really, really wanted to go, and so she finally talked her mom, Beth, into letting her go. It was an all-inclusive package, so all of the alcohol that they wanted was included in the package. The legal drinking age and the legal gambling age in Aruba is 18, so when these kids got down there, they were pretty much just celebrating hardcore. There was a popular night spot for the Mountain Brook High School kids called Carlos and Charlie's. It was a pretty popular bar / nightclub there in Aruba that the kids had gone to a couple of times on their trip, and on their last night they were like, well, let's go to Carlos and Charlie's, you know, we have to go out with a bang, and the only place to do that is Carlos and Charlie's. And so they got to Carlos and Charlie's, they had a great time. Club closes around 1 in the morning, and around that time, Natalee is seen leaving the club with 3 men, Joran Vandersloot and the Kalpo brothers, Deepak and Satish. Joran was actually a regular at the casino in the hotel that the kids were staying at, and they had actually invited him to come to Carlos and Charlie's with them on that final night because he was in the casino. They saw him and asked him if he wanted to come along, and he did. Kalpo brothers showed up. Natalee was seen dancing with Joran throughout the night. She'd also been drinking, and Natalee was also described as being rather naive coming down this trip. Her mom said that she had never smoked, never drank, never really had a serious boyfriend. She was drinking a lot on the trip, as were most of our high school graduates. She was pretty tipsy when she was leaving the club. So around 20 to 40 people saw Natalee leaving the club that night at close. And one student asked her if she wanted to go with them. They were going somewhere, and Natalee was like, no, I'm going back to the hotel. We're leaving tomorrow. I'm just going back to the Holiday Inn. At some point between then and when she was seen leaving, she changed her mind, whether it was because the boys coerced her, she made the decision on her own volition, that rhymed, but somewhere in between then and her leaving, she decided that she was changing her plans and not leaving with other Mountain Brook students, but she was going to take a ride from Joran and the Kalpa brothers. As she was leaving, some of her friends were pretty concerned about her. One of her friends saw her get into the car with Joran and the Kalpa brothers and said, "Are you crazy? What are you doing? Get out of the car, Natalee." And she ignored them and hung out the window and yelled something along the lines of, "Woohoo, Aruba!" and drove off, and that was the last time that anybody would see her. So on Monday, May 30th, around 10:30, so we fast forward to that morning, all of the Mountain Brook students are packing up and meeting down in the lobby to go to the airport to go back to Alabama. And they realize that Natalee and her luggage are not there. So a chaperone goes up to Natalee's room and sees that all of her things are still there. Her passport and all of her luggage is where she left it, where she'd been packing the day before. They're like, she'll show up. So they take her things and they go to the airport.
So I'm boarding my plane. One of our friends, Frances Ellen, comes running through the airport, grabs me as I'm getting on my plane and says, "Natalee is not coming home. We can't find her." And I say, Beth is gonna be so mad, because my initial reaction is, she is overslept. Where is she? It wasn't panic.
Two of the chaperones on the trip actually, once they got all of the kids to the airport and on the plane, they turned around and went back to the hotel to see if Natalee was there. Natalee was not there. So around 11 a.m., one of the chaperones calls the Aruban authorities and lets them know that Natalee is missing. The issue here is that in Aruba, the authorities are like, well, we have missing tourists all the time. People will extend their vacations and not tell anybody, so we can't officially declare her missing until after 48 hours is up. At that point, one of the chaperones around 12 o'clock calls Natalee's mom. Natalee's mom is currently on her way home from a girls trip in Arkansas, and she's coming back to Alabama. She's got to be home in time to pick Natalee up from the airport.
I knew instantly when I received that call that, just from Natalee's history and character and just her record, I knew instantly that she'd either been kidnapped or murdered. There was no hesitation, absolutely none. I'm saying, my daughter's been kidnapped or murdered in Aruba. Help me, I need some help. And then the calls turned into, I'm calling 911 and I'm telling them I'm driving 120 miles an hour down the interstate and don't anybody stop me.
So Beth gets back to Birmingham around 5 o'clock p.m. A family friend had offered up their private plane to take Jug and Beth and a couple of other family friends down to Aruba. As soon as Beth gets to Aruba, she is a woman on a mission. She's like, I'm going to find my daughter. She's, calling Natalee's friends, and she hears the name Joran Vandersloot. So she starts asking employees at the hotel, do you know this man? And one of the hotel employees actually told her that she knew exactly who she was talking about and that he had a reputation for preying on some of the American tourists. And as any parent, that just kind of strikes fear into you. So Beth takes Joran Vandersloot's name to the authorities and says, this is the last person to have seen my daughter alive. Again, the authorities can't officially do anything because Natalee will not be considered missing until 48 hours are up. And so Beth and Jug decide to take matters into their own hands. So they figure out where Vandersloot lives, and they go to his house and are waiting on authorities to get there. And Beth is calling friends back home and saying, what do you know about him? What do you know about him? And when the authorities arrive, Vandersloot comes out, and when they ask him, have you seen her? He denied knowing Natalee at all. They kind of called BS on this, and he then retried him. He was like, oh, no, I know who you're talking about. I saw her. We gave her a ride. We drove around for a little bit after we left the club because she wanted to go see the sharks. So we took her to this lighthouse where she could see sharks at 2 in the morning. Mind you. They drove her there, and then they came back and dropped her off at the hotel at around 2 o'clock in the morning. He said that when she got out of the car, she was so drunk that she actually fell out of the car, and she refused any of his help to get up. And as they drove off, they saw a man wearing a dark shirt, kind of like security guards wear, approaching her, and that was the last time they saw her. So by Wednesday, Natalie's been missing for about 48 hours now, so they can officially start looking for her. And hundreds of volunteers from Aruba and from the United States are scouring this island looking for her. The Aruban authorities actually gave all workers a half day off so they could assist in the searches. Like, that's how serious this was. The Aruban authorities at this point are like, okay, we need to make an arrest, do something, because the case was already starting to ruin the tourism industry.
1/3 of Aruba's income comes from tourism, around 1 million visitors a year, half of those from the US.
Beth and Jug are using the media to help get their story out there, to get people involved in the case, involved in helping finding Natalee, and it's turning people off to the idea of traveling to Aruba because, you know, a 18-year-old girl went missing. So they're feeling the pressure from that, they're feeling the pressure from the family itself, and then they're feeling pressure from outside sources like the United States government. You know, Beth and Jug got the FBI involved as soon as they could, and there was a lot of pressure on the Aruban authorities to make an arrest. And because of that, there is a lot of brewing tension already between the Aruban authorities and Natalee's family. The Aruban authorities thought that the family was way too involved in the case, that they were obstructing the investigation, and the family felt that the Aruban authorities weren't doing enough when it came to finding their daughter.
Many saying Natalee's parents were victims of an investigation botched from the start by Aruban authorities.
Do you feel the Peruvian authorities handled the investigation well?
No, because they took their eyes off the last 3 people that were with Natalee.
There were actually a few false alarms the first few days into the investigation, as per, you know, the media getting their hands on this case and Beth and Jug basically conducting their own investigation at the same time that the Aruban authorities were. The first false alarm comes in right as the official investigation begins. A tip came in saying that Natalee was being held at a crack house downtown in Aruba, and that she was with friends who, you know, just wanted to make sure she was okay, and that they would let the family have her if they paid them $4,000. So basically a ransom. So they pull together the money and they take off to this crack house downtown, and it turns out that Natalee is not there. The second false alarm is that the media, again, getting involved, they found out that there was a girl driving around Aruba that they thought was Natalee in a car, and they said, you know, she's blonde, she's in this car, you know, it's gotta be Natalee. There's like a whole parade of cars following this car that everybody thinks Natalee Holloway is in. Finally, the police get involved and they pull this car over and they detain the driver and all the passengers. They hear over the police radio that they're 98% sure it's Natalee, so they think that they have found Natalee Holloway alive. And it causes a huge media storm because the media were the ones who, again, gave them this tip. There's a crowd outside of the police station. You know, everybody wants to get a glimpse of Natalee Holloway found safe and alive. And, you know, Beth and Jug go down there to pick up their daughter, and it turns out that it was a false alarm and that it was just a blonde American tourist who had extended her vacation, and it was not Natalee. And as you can imagine, the family was gutted. So on June 4th, the police announced that they have 3 Aruban men as their lead suspects in the case. Somewhere between June 5th and June 8th, I have seen different dates on different sources on when this happened, but 2 former security guards from the Allegra Hotel were detained in relation to the case. These 2 guys were reportedly known for cruising around downtown on all these hotels and picking up women. And they thought that one of these men might have been the man that Joran van der Sloot had hinted at being the last person to see Natalee. The reason that these men were even detained was because of the initial questioning and the statement that Joran van der Sloot and the Calpro brothers gave. They all said the same thing, that, you know, they dropped Natalee off, she fell out of the car, didn't want their help, and that some guy who looked like hotel security was the one who helped her up and was with her last. And it turns out that they made that up. So on June 13th, they eventually released the 2 former security guards without charging them, because on June 7th, Joran Vandersloot, Deepak, and Satish Kalpoe were all arrested in suspicion of being involved with Natalee's disappearance. The police commissioner there in Aruba, Gerald Dompig, said that the only reason they made these arrests as soon as they did was basically to satiate Natalee's family. Surveillance had only started on like June 2nd, so 5 days later they arrested the boys. They had to abandon all of that prematurely in order to arrest them to appease these people who were just slamming the authorities and the media for not doing anything, for being lazy, you know, whatever. And according to the Dutch law and Aruba law, you can be arrested on suspicion, but in order for them to keep you in custody, at certain points, police have to prove that they have an increasing evidential burden, which basically means that they have enough evidence to bring to trial and raise an issue against you. And so at this point, the race is on to get either evidence or a confession out of these three boys. When Joran Vandersloot and the Kalpoe brothers are arrested, their story changes again. So now they're all three saying the Kalpoe brothers dropped Joran and Natalee off at this beach near the Marriott Hotel where these fishermen huts are, and then, you know, Natalee and Joran were on the beach. Joran left her there and walked home, and that was the last time he saw her. She was still alive when he left. What's funny about their new statement, you know, that they dropped her off at this beach and left her there, is that there were local fishermen at these huts where they supposedly were that night, and they said that there was no way that Joran Vandersloot and Natalee Holloway were at that beach. They would have remembered seeing the two of them, and that they would have had to been blind and deaf to miss the two of them there. Like, there just wasn't anybody there at that time. 3 weeks, they're held, and they stick to this story like dogs to a bone. Like, they are just adamant that we dropped them off at this beach. Joran walked home, didn't hurt her, she was still alive. On June 17th, a party boat DJ named Steve Crows, hope I'm saying that name right, was arrested in connection with the case. He apparently knew the Kalpoe brothers, and there were rumors about him saying that he was the guy you went to if you wanted date rape drugs and was an alleged drug dealer. So they're thinking, okay, one of the boys roofied Natalee. That was the assumption. And then on June 22nd, Joran Vandersloot's father, Paul, is detained for questioning. They're thinking, okay, maybe Joran told him something, maybe he knows what happened to Natalee, so they take him in for questioning, and then they arrest him the next day. On June 26th, they wind up letting both the party boat DJ and Joran Vandersloot's father, Paul, they have to let them go because they don't have sufficient evidence to hold them. So on July 4th, Joran Vandersloot and the Kalpoe brothers go up in front of a judge for their first hearing. And in this hearing, there are still no charges being pressed against them. There is insufficient evidence to continue holding the Kalpoe brothers, so they have to be released. And Joran Vandersloot is to be held for 60 more days, since he claimed that he was the last person who saw her without charges. And during that 60 days, the police have to find more evidence than what they already have, which at that point is basically nothing. After this hearing, Natalee's family was not happy, to say the least. They did a little press conference about it.
2 suspects were released yesterday who were involved in a violent crime against my daughter. These criminals are not only allowed to walk freely among the tourists and citizens of Aruba, but there are no limits where they may choose to travel. I am asking all mothers and fathers in all nations to hear my plea. I implore you, do not allow these 2 suspects, the Kalpoe brothers, to enter your country until this case is solved. Do not allow these criminals to walk among your citizens. Help me by not allowing these 2 to get away with this crime. It is my greatest fear today that the Kalpoe brothers will leave Aruba. I'm asking the Aruban officials to notify the United States State Department in the event these suspects try to leave this island. I'm asking all nations not to offer them a safe haven. I'm asking this in the name of my beautiful, intelligent, and outstanding daughter, who I haven't seen for 36 days and for whom I will continue to search until I find her.
They increased the reward that they had out for finding Natalee or bringing forward information about what happened to her and that could help bring her home. They increased the reward to $1 million. Police are still looking for evidence. They're still trying to get a confession out of Joran Vandersloot, to literally no avail. July 27th, the gardener turns up. So there was a small pond near the Marriott Hotel that was being drained because somebody's gardener had said that they had seen Joran van der Sloot and the Calpo brothers burying Natalee's body in this vacant lot, dirt lot near the Marriott, and that the gardener had been driving down the dirt road going to some racket club near the hotel, and he had seen the boys like while he was driving, and that the boys had, you know, concealed their faces from him, and that there were like mounds of dirt and their car was blocking the road, and that they were there, and that was where Natalee was buried. And the tip turned out to be a bunch of bullshit because they drained the pond and there was nothing but trash at the bottom of it. After this, there is another report from the jogger who says that he saw a blonde being buried in a landfill. What's interesting is that when all of the initial searches were going on and, you know, people had to get off work to search, they had searched that landfill and didn't find anything. But because they, you know, they needed something to nail Joran van der Sloot to the wall in order to keep him, they searched the landfill 3 more times with cadaver dogs and found nothing. On August 26th, the Calpo brothers are arrested again in relation to the case, and the official charge was, I'm reading out of my notebook, on suspicion of involvement in premeditated murder and rape. This was a very big risk for the police. In Joran van der Sloot's initial statement, the one where he claimed that he was in the car driving to God knows where with Natalee, he said in his statement that he had engaged in sexual activity with Natalee in the back of the car. He said that she was going in and out of consciousness during this time. And according to Dutch law, that's considered non-consensual sex. They figure that if Deepak and Satish were in the front of the car while this is going on, knowing that it's happening, they can be considered accessories to the crime. They arrested them for this, thinking that, okay, if we can nail them for being accessories, they'll cave, they'll sell out Joran, and we can get him. They thought they were going to get a confession out of the brothers, and they stayed silent. This wound up being detrimental to the case. They go in front of a judge again. The judge says, you have to release the Calpo brothers. You don't have any evidence that they've done anything. And when the Calpo brothers are released, Joran van der Sloot's, you know, team is like, well, what about him? There's still no evidence towards our client either. And the judge had to agree with that. The Holloways, of course, were completely devastated. In their mind, they knew who had done it. On September 1st, all 3 boys were released on the condition that they remain available to police, that they stay in Aruba. But by September 14th, all of those conditions had been completely dropped, and they were still considered suspects, but they were pretty much free to do whatever. The Calpo brothers got back to work there in Aruba, while Joran and his father left to go to the Netherlands. So after Joran and the Calpo brothers are released, things start to kind of go on downhill. Dave Holloway, he was in Aruba helping Luke with Beth and Jug. He goes home in late October. From January to April 2006, there are a few more searches for evidence or for Natalee, but they turn up with nothing, and at this point the family has kind of accepted that their daughter is no longer alive, but rather she's dead, and they just want her remains. Joran van der Sloot is a free man walking around in college, and he is the salacious type, we shall say, and he is giving interviews left and right about what really happened, because at this point his story has changed 3 times. And you know, first he says that he doesn't know her, then he says that, oh, well, we went to go to a lighthouse to see some sharks, then he says we were on a beach near a hotel and I left her there. So already there's a pattern kind of establishing itself, and it's that he's a liar. Everybody wants to know the truth, and he is like, okay, I can make a quick buck telling you the truth. So the most notable discussion that he has with the media is in March 2006 with Fox News. He says that no, he did not have sex with Natalee at all. He left her on the beach because she asked him to, and he felt bad about it, and that, you know, after the fact, he regretted it because he realized, she was kind of, you know, not in a sober state of mind, and that maybe I shouldn't have left her on this beach. And he said that he didn't tell the truth initially because he thought that, you know, she would turn up eventually. So on April 15th, 2006, a new suspect known by the initials GVC is arrested in relation to suspicion of narcotics dealings that might have been related to Natalee's disappearance. Everything was pretty much legal down in Aruba for the kids to get into, and there was some talk that the Mountain Brook kids were buying drugs and that this guy knew something about, you know, what she was taking, what she was on. He was released 10 days after the fact. And then 2 other people were arrested in April and May of 2006 respectively, but they were let go very soon after because, again, there just wasn't any evidence. It was basically like this girl in Johan Vandersloot's shoes had just disappeared into thin air. There was nothing left, nothing. Some of the authorities in the Netherlands, they team up with the Aruban authorities for like a one last swing at Vandersloot and the Calpo brothers. In April 2007, they launch up this new search. A book had come out. I think it was called The Case of Natalee Holloway. Johan Vandersloot, everybody's favorite media darling, had done an interview with the people in the book talking about what really happened. And so they, like, right after that was released, the search started. They say that there was no relation to the two. I happen to think otherwise. There are no such thing as coincidences in my world. By November 21st, 2007, new evidence has come up, and the Calpo brothers and Johan Vandersloot are arrested again on suspicion of involvement in manslaughter and causing serious bodily harm that resulted in the death of Natalee Holloway. Johan Vandersloot is detained in the Netherlands and then extradited to Aruba. The Calpos are arrested there in Aruba. And these arrests do not stick at all. And at this point, the attorneys for the Calpo brothers and Johan Vandersloot are just like, there is nothing. There is nothing that ties these boys to hurting her or killing her. Like, there's no physical evidence that you have. It's all just speculation. You have to let our clients go. On November 31st, the Calpo brothers are released. The prosecution tries to appeal it and it is denied. So on December 1st, the Calpo brothers are see ya. And then on December 7th, Johan Vandersloot is released without any charges. And on December 18th, 2007, the officials announced that the case is officially closed and that there are going to be no charges at this time. For the Holloway family, this is just absolutely devastating, which I would imagine it would be. Like, at this point, it's been over 2 years that she's gone missing and nothing has turned up. Nothing. Literally nothing. As I was doing research, I was like, wow, this is a really long time, but it's not. Literally in January of 2008, so weeks later, a Dutch crime reporter named Peter de Vries, I hope I'm saying that name right, he comes forward and he says that he has obtained a confession from Johan Vandersloot. This is big news because Johan Vandersloot has not confessed to anything up until this point. He has just made statements saying that he left her on the beach. He didn't know what happened to her. And a confession is a really, really big deal in this case because there is no evidence, and the only way they can charge anybody is if somebody confesses. So this guy, Peter, he claims that he has gotten a confession. So one of his undercover employees was a drug dealer, and the drug dealer had kind of gained the trust of Johan, and Johan thought the two were going to do business together.
Maar je zo'n vinger en toen denk ik blam afgelopen. Nee, ik was aan het vingeren, aan het lullen. Gewoon met aan het lullen, gewoon met aan het lullen. Ik ging wel wat net gaan zeggen en toen in een keer. Klaar. Moet iets te trillen? Ik weet het ook niet, ik denk dat... Maar heb jij niet geprobeerd te reanimeren? Tuurlijk, ik heb alles geprobeerd, man. Ik heb haar geprobeerd te schudden. Ik zat altijd te schudden van wat doet dit zo met je, man. Ik wou bijna huilen van waarom moet dit shit met mij zo gebeuren. Tuurlijk hoor, tuurlijk. En ik zeg tegen de krant, gaan we het oplossen? Zei hij, ja, de boot staat daar zo, staat daar zo bij die pier zo, ik weet het ook. Ja. En hij zei tegen me, ja oké, nou help me dan eventjes. Ja. En dus hebben we gewoon haar genomen naar die boot. Getild. Ja, met z'n tweetjes even snel. En hij zei tegen me van, wat zei zei hij toen tegen me. Toen ik daar was, zei hij van ja, maar weet je, je moet wel morgen naar school toe gaan en die dingen, want als er een vermist meisje is, dan... En ik dus dingen ook. Ik zei ja, je hebt helemaal gelijk. Ik moet gewoon normale dingen doen. Hij is ver gegaan en heeft er gewoon over de zij gegooid, dus die teruggekomen, heeft hij zijn boot daar gezet. En is hij nog bij mij thuis langsgekomen. Ja, vannacht. Ja. En dus we hebben nog even gesproken en toen zei hij tegen me van ja, weet je, het is allemaal goed, ze gaat gewoon vermist zijn, ze gaan zoeken, maar ze gaan niks weten, misschien komen ze nog.
So Joran said in this hidden camera confession, he was with Natalee on the beach. While they were doing whatever, Natalee started having a seizure. He didn't know what was happening and she went unresponsive. And so he tried to revive her, didn't have any luck, and thought she was dead. And so he panicked and he called a friend to help him dispose of the body. So everybody takes it, you know, they're like, oh my God, he confessed.
Yeah.
God.
No regrets at all?
No. Don't even know if she's dead or not. No.
He only seems to care for himself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And he wants to profit from it.
Oh my gosh, he has just...
Now I can abuse it, he said.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. God, it's all true.
But Joran Vandersloot, who at this point has gotten pretty good with just telling people what he thinks they want to hear, he recants the entire confession and says that he made it all up because he was trying to impress this drug dealer in the car in order to do business with him, and was just saying something that would make him sound really cool and really worthy of this guy's time, and that he was also under the influence of marijuana, and that it was just all, you know, he just made it up. He goes back and he just says, you know, I really did leave her on the beach. I didn't do anything with her. I didn't hurt her. In November of 2008, Joran does an interview with Fox News again. He tells them that he sold Natalee into sex slavery for $10,000 and that his dad had paid off 2 police officers who found out that she was in Venezuela. And after the interview, he calls Fox News and he said, I just made the whole thing up. And Fox decides to air the interview. At this point, this dude is a pathological liar. Why anybody is believing him when he says he's going to tell the truth is deluding themselves. In February of 2010, Joran does another interview and says that he left Natalee's body in a marsh. He doesn't necessarily recant this statement, but authorities determine that it's complete bullshit because in terms of the location, the names that Joran gave, and the timeline, none of it makes sense. So there's like no possible way that this could be the truth. In March of 2010, Joran Vandersloot contacts Beth's legal representative and basically says that I will tell you where Natalee's body is and what really happened to her if you give me $250,000, and a tenth of that, so $25,000, has to be given to me in advance before I tell you anything. So he's basically trying to sell them her remains, which at this point, that's all the family wants, is they just want to know where Natalee's body is so they can, you know, bring her home and lay her to rest. And it's really kind of fucking sick that he's doing this, but he does it. The legal representative contacts the FBI and is like, yo, this is extortion, but he might be telling the truth. And so the FBI decides they're gonna take the opportunity and set up a sting operation. Vandersloot gets the $25,000 in advance. He receives $15,000 of that from a wire transfer, and then $10,000 in cash when he meets up with one of the undercover people in Aruba. And he tells the undercover FBI agent that Natalee was buried at this house in Aruba. And he takes him to the house and it's like, this is where I buried her. And then, for lack of a better word, he just like pieces out and takes off, because they very shortly find out after that there was no record of this house even being built back in 2005, so there's no way she could be buried there. They have enough to nail him for extortion and wire fraud. So on June 3rd of 2010, he's charged in Alabama for extortion and wire fraud. But this is very interesting because while they're charging him for this, something very, very monumental is occurring. As I said, Joran van der Sloot showed the FBI agent where Natalee was buried and then peaced out right after. He took off and he went to Peru for a poker tour. And on May 30th, 2010, 5 years to the day, 21-year-old Stephanie Flores is reported missing by her family in Lima, Peru. What's really interesting about her disappearance is that hotel guests and employees reported her as being at the same hotel that Joran van der Sloot was staying at, and that the two were together. At this point, there is now an investigation for another missing girl in which Joran van der Sloot is the main suspect. Surveillance tapes show the two of them at a casino together playing cards, and then leaving the casino together, and then there's surveillance at the hotel where Joran was staying of him and Stephanie. On June 2nd, Stephanie Flores' body is found in room 309 of this hotel, which is the same room that is registered under Joran van der Sloot's name. At this point, with a dead body in your hotel room, that kind of spells out who did it. And on May 31st, Joran had peaced out again and was seen crossing the Chile border. So Interpol puts out an international warrant for Joran van der Sloot's arrest. And on June 3rd, he is found. They arrest him. He tells the Chilean police that there were unidentified robbers in their hotel room when they got back, and that the robbers had killed Stephanie when she disobeyed them and wasn't quiet when they told her to, and that they had just killed her and then took off, and that was why all of her jewelry was missing, her money, ID, all that. So after he tells them that, he's transported back to Peru, and on June 7th, Joran van der Sloot confesses to killing Stephanie Flores. He says that the reason he killed her was because he lost his temper when he found out that she had gotten on his laptop without his permission, and she found out that he was involved with the Natalee Holloway disappearance. And she had confronted him about it. On June 11th, Joran van der Sloot is charged with first-degree murder and robbery without bail. He is held in a maximum security prison in a cell block that only has one other person. And he claims that he is scared for his life. He is like, he'll do anything. He's a piece of shit, basically. And he says that, he'll tell them where Natalee's body is and what happened to her if they will transport him to an Aruban prison. And the president of Peru completely shuts him down and is like, no, you're going to stand trial in Peru and you're going to serve your sentence in Peru. And then on January 11th of 2012, Joran van der Sloot pleads guilty to his 2 charges of first-degree murder and robbery and is sentenced to 28 years. Then, what I personally think is great, in addition to that, he will also have to serve the time for the extortion and the wire fraud charges after he's done serving his murder sentence. As of 2019, nobody has been charged in the Natalee Holloway disappearance. No remains have been found. There have been a few false alarms. In 2010, I think a few tourists found a jawbone that was identified as belonging to a young white woman, but it turned out not being her.
5 years after Natalee Holloway vanished, investigators are chasing their most promising lead yet. According to a Dutch newspaper, a jawbone found by tourists on a beach in Aruba is being tested to determine if it's the remains of the missing U.S. teen. The bone reportedly contains at least 1 intact molar. Dutch officials are asking Holloway's family for copies of her dental records.
And then in late 2017, there was an Oxygen documentary that I personally have not watched called The Disappearance of Natalee Holloway. And basically, Dave Holloway was like at the head of it, claiming that there was new evidence and new leads. An informant had come forward and he had led this private investigator that Dave Holloway hired to remains, and they were human remains, but they did not belong to Natalee, come to find out. And then the same informant that took the private investigator to these remains knew of a friend of Joran van der Sloot who had said that Joran had told him what happened to Natalee, and that in 2010, this guy, John Ludwig, he and Joran went to where Natalee was buried. They dug her up, they smashed her bones, and then they cremated her. It turns out that there was a whole mess behind it. Beth didn't know that they were making a series, so she sued the producers in 2018. I have not personally watched it. If you have, let me know in a comment below. I'm interested to hear. June of 2011, Dave Holloway filed a petition to a judge to declare Natalee legally dead. He wanted to get some closure for, you know, himself and his family. He wanted to transfer money that was in her college saving account to her brother Matt. On January 12th, 2012, a judge in Alabama signed the order of death and declared Natalee legally dead due to absentia. Theories about what happened to Natalee. The first theory is that Ron Vandersloot did sell her into sex slavery. He made the confession that he sold her into slavery for $10,000, which was kind of bullshit, but he actually was involved in human trafficking. From 2008 to 2009, he was a human trafficker in Thailand. He was posing as Murphy Jenkins, a consultant from a modeling agency, and was tricking and lying to these poor Thai girls. So is it too far off to say that he didn't sell her into sex slavery? When you look at that, it could go. The second theory, and the one that I personally believe, is that Natalee was given the date rape drug or some other kind of drug by Joran, and when they were on the beach, she had a seizure or stroke or something and was unresponsive. He panicked, and then he disposed of her body, most likely in the ocean. Third theory is that, in a very similar vein of the Stephanie Flores case, Joran Vandersloot lost his temper when he was with Natalee because she refused to have sex with him, and he choked her, strangled her, killed her, and then he disposed of the body with or without assistance. The theories as to what he did with the body vary. There's cremation, he threw her body into the ocean, or he buried her somewhere where they wouldn't find her. I think that is like the least possible. Personally, I think cremation and throwing her body into the ocean are the most plausible when you look at that theory in particular, just because it explains why nobody has ever been able to find this girl's remains. And finally, the fourth theory is that Joran was telling the truth and that he did leave her on the beach and walk off that night, and that somebody else got to her and killed her, sold her, whatever. Again, I personally believe that he gave her the date rape drug. She had a seizure, he panicked and didn't know what to do and was scared he was gonna get in trouble or thought she was already dead and just threw her in the ocean. There is actually a museum not far from me. It's called Alcatraz East. It's a crime museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. And they have a Natalee Holloway tribute with tips for traveling safely, which is something that I want to talk about. When Natalee went missing, I was very little, and because of it, I remember my grandma and my mom telling me these things that I needed to remember. And it was that you never leave your friends alone, like the buddy system. Always tell people where you're going. Girls and guys, girls especially though, because we travel in packs, you do not leave your friends alone. You do not let your friends go with some cute guy that you don't know at the bar. You stick together. You come together, you leave together. You know, there were so many people, 20 to 40 people saw her get in that car with Joran and the Calpo brothers. One of them even told her to get out of the car. Like, if somebody had just been a little bit more adamant about Natalee not going with them, she might still be alive today doing fantastic things. In addition to that, if you're traveling, you always need to be aware of your surroundings. Like, I know it's very easy to just walk around on your phone and look disinterested, but you need to be aware and alert of your surroundings. Fake it till you make it. Pretend. Even if you don't, act like it, because if you look like you're lost, somebody is likely to prey on you. Never ever flash money in public. And then if you are traveling internationally, make sure you know what the emergency number is, because in America, the emergency number is 911, but that's not the case for other countries. So it's important that you know the right number to call if an emergency does arise. Missing white woman syndrome. So this is something that I didn't really know about because I am a white woman and I have that privilege. But missing white woman syndrome is defined as a phenomena of excessive media coverage for missing persons cases involving young white upper middle class females. And basically at this point, the missing white woman is an entire news genre. Cases for women of color, women of a lower social class, and men and boys are incredibly underrepresented. And the missing white woman syndrome basically says that white women are better front page victims and worth the time and coverage, and that white children are more valuable to society, which is complete bullshit. Beyond race and sex, factors like attractiveness, youthfulness, those all contribute to how much coverage time a missing person gets. Just look at Natalee Holloway. She was described as being a beautiful young white female, and she was practically the princess of missing persons. Just watch the news, see what missing persons cases get talked about, and see how they talk about victims. Because, you know, for white women, they talk about they were a beloved role, like a beloved mother, a beloved daughter, some other, you know, role in society that they held. And then when you look at a woman of color in particular, or a woman of lower social class, they talk about their troubled past, or abusive boyfriends, or other problems that have gone on in their life. And they just speak about people in a very different light. And I think the thing to take away from it is that, like I said at the beginning of this video, every missing person is worth the time, the resources, and the energy in finding and bringing justice, period. Regardless of race, socioeconomic status, sex, all of that. Everybody deserves to come home, and God forbid if they can't come home, then they deserve to have justice. So yeah, that is the Natalee Holloway case. I'm sorry about the lighting situation. I've been sitting on the floor for quite some time now. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please let me know what you think about me doing these types of videos. If you think I did a good job, I would also really love some constructive criticism and feedback on what I could do differently the next time I do a true crime case. If you have any requests for cases, that would be fantastic. Please leave those in a comment below. And I hope that you've taken something away from this video, whether it is new information about, you know, a true crime case, or a life lesson. Yeah, my battery is dying and I am trying to rush through the rest of this video as fast as I can. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I make new videos whenever I want to ramble, and hopefully that will be more often and more frequent. All of my social media is in the down bar below. Come be my internet friend. I love making those. Take care. Mwah. Love ya. Bye.